much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Second. Welcome to the Village of Lake Bluff Board of Trustees regular meeting on April 8, 2019. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Ankman.
Here.
Trustee Dewart.
Here.
Trustee Lemieux.
Here.
Trustee Meyer.
Here.
Trustee Toll.
Here.
Would everyone please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Thank you. All right. The next thing is actually an honor to do this. We have a proclamation this evening honoring the public service of postal carrier, retired very recently, Paula Nordine. Paula, could you mind coming up? Thank you. This is one of the funner things, that we do.
All right.
Great. You're out of uniform.
I know.
I told
But
you.
I did go
For 30 years, we have seen you and
everywhere.
heard you, your good cheer, your constant smile, always a good word. You've been a face for Lake Bluff, a really positive and wonderful and warm face that truly represents who we all try to be that way, and you do succeed. And you will be very, very greatly missed, but I know that you're not going too far.
No, not going
And
on.
I'm sure there'll be ways that we will be seen and used in this town. We thank you.
Well,
So
thank you.
Well, here, now, hold
Thank
on.
you.
We've got, no, here, I've got to read this.
Oh, okay.
You're not official until I read it. This is a proclamation
Okay.
honoring Paula Nordine. Whereas the United States Code affirms that the Postal Service shall be operated as a basic and fundamental service and shall have as its basic function the obligation to provide postal services to bind the nation together through the personal, educational, literary, and business correspondence of the people. And whereas the nation and the village rely on dependable and dedicated postal carriers who uphold the decree that neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. And whereas Paula Nordine, one of the village's neighborhood postal carriers, is known for her delivery of good conversation and smiles to village residents in addition to their mail. That's the plus we get. And whereas Paula Nordine recently retired from the United States Postal Service after proud service for over 30 years, during which time her positive attitude and contributions touched many lives throughout the village. And whereas the village desires to join its residents who have expressed their gratitude to Paula Nordine through the creation of public signs and announcements posted throughout the village, congratulating her on the occasion of her retirement. And whereas Paula Nordine is now retired, but will, no doubt, continue to share her heart and soul with the village post-retirement. Now therefore, be it proclaimed by the village of President and Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Bluff, County of Lake, and State of Illinois, hereby offer a sincere thank you to Paula for bringing our mail with a personal touch many smiles, and a spirit of friendship, and recognize and congratulate her for many contributions to this residence and the village. That such recognition and gratitude of the village of Lake Bluff be publicly expressed to Paula Nordine for her service to this community, and that this proclamation be incorporated in the minutes of this village board meeting, and that an executed copy of this proclamation be presented as a token of appreciation for her service to this village. Paula, thank you for everything.
Very overwhelming. Everyone has been so good to me, and I would like to thank everyone for everything you have all done to make this a very, very special time for me. I love Lake Bluff. I love the post office. I love a lot of you who I've gotten to know over the years, and it's a really, really special place, and I'm lucky and blessed, and to have all of you in my world. All of this is a perfect reflection of exactly what Lake Bluff is. It's our own little bubble of caring and generous people who all care for each other and get along and the best we can. Not always, but mostly. And thank you. Thank you to everyone for being so special to me. You made being nice easy because you're all wonderful. Thank you.
Right? Yes, you lucky person. You get to go. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. As I said, those are some of the funner things that we get to do. All righty. We also have a proclamation declaring April 26, 2019 Arbor Day. If I may take that time. Whereas Arbor Day will be officially observed in the state of Illinois on Friday, April 26, 2019 by proclamation of the governor, and the planting of trees on Arbor Day is a tradition throughout the state and the village of Lake Bluff, whereas the village of Lake Bluff has been recognized as Tree City USA for the past 23 years by the National Arbor Day Foundation, and whereas trees in our village, wherever they are planted, increase property values, enhance our business and residential areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy and promote the environmental well-being of present and future generations. And whereas the Lake Bluff Garden Club, Lake Bluff Open Lands, Lake Bluff School District, Lake Bluff Park District, and other private and public institutions have actively supported preservation efforts and the renewal of natural areas through tree planting and landscape projects. And whereas the celebration of Arbor Day 2019 in Lake Bluff will be observed on Thursday, April 25th at 10 a.m. throughout the day in programs at schools, and in particular in the planting of an autumn gold ginkgo tree at the Lake Bluff Recreational Center. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Kathleen O'Hara, Village President of the Village of Lake Bluff, Illinois, proclaim Friday, April 26, 2019 as Arbor Day in the Village of Lake Bluff, and I urge all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees, woodlands, to plant trees on this day, and to join the celebration ceremony with the Lake Bluff Garden Club and the Lake Bluff Open Lands. Thank you. We also have a proclamation designating April 2019 Fair Housing Month. Whereas April 2019 marks the 51st anniversary of the passage of the U.S. Fair Housing Law Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing without regard to race, color, religion, sex, familial status, handicap, and national origin, and encourages fair housing opportunities for all citizens. And whereas individuals in the state of Illinois are guaranteed the right to choose Where to live without discrimination based on race, color, religion, age, sex, including sexual harassment and pregnancy, familial status, marital status, national origin, ancestry, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, military status, unfavorable military discharge, and order of protection status. And whereas acts of housing discrimination and barriers to equal housing opportunity are repugnant to a common sense of decency and fairness, and whereas the Village of Lake Bluff welcomes the opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to the principle of fair housing for all, is committed to all efforts that addresses discrimination in our community, supports all programs that will educate the public concerning their rights to equal housing opportunity, and assures every person their right to live free of the fear of housing discrimination. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Village President and Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Bluff, County of Lake, and State of Illinois, we do hereby proclaim April 2019 Fair Housing Month in the Village of Lake Bluff and call upon the people of Lake Bluff to wholeheartedly recognize the importance of fair housing to our village and nation and the progress we have made in ensuring equal and equitable housing for all people.
Before you go to the next one, just a housekeeping item.
Ah, yes. Okay, we did not do a, yes, thank you very much. I should have done a, do I have a motion to,
You just needed to say that's all.
I just need to say
Yep,
this.
yep, yep.
Well, if I've ever done that before.
I'll tell you why in a minute.
Exception.
Yeah.
What?
We're making an exception.
Oh, we are. I'm not even gonna go there. I'll just do it. If there is no objection, these three proclamations are approved by the Lake Bluff Board of Trustees. I don't hear any objection, so we're okay? Thank you very much. All righty. Okay, we also have the GFOA Certificate of Achievement in Financial Reporting for year 2018. And that is, the Village of Lake Bluff is a proud recipient of two prestigious financial awards from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. These awards represent a significant accomplishment by staff, namely Village Finance Director Bettina O'Connell and her team in implementing the higher standards and best practices in municipal budgeting and financial reporting and setting an example to other agencies. The Government Finance Officers Association, commonly known as GFOA, has presented a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award to the Village of Lake Bluff for its biennial budget being May 1st, 2018. The Distinguished Budget Award is the highest form of recognition in governmental budgeting. GFOA established this Distinguished Budget Presentation Awards program in 1984 to encourage and assist state and local governments to prepare budget documents of the very highest quality that reflects both the guidelines established by the National Advisory Council on State and Local Budgeting and the GFOA's best practices on budgeting, and then to recognize individual governments that succeed in achieving this goal. The Village of Lake Bluff was also awarded the Certificate of Achievement for the Excellence in Financial Reporting for its fiscal year 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. This is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting. The GFOA established their Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting program in 1945 to encourage and assist state and local governments to go beyond the minimal requirements of generally accepted accounting principles to prepare comprehensive annual financial reports that evidence the spirit of transparency and full disclosures, and then to recognize individual governments that succeed in achieving this goal. The goal of the program is not to assess the financial health of participating governments, but rather to ensure that users of their financial statements have the information they need to do so themselves. Despite receiving these very awards numerous times, staff remains committed to continue working on improving the quality of financial documents and maintaining transparency in public spending. Staff is appreciative of the Village Board and Finance Committee support and guidance in these efforts. And we'd just like to say to Bettina and your entire team,
it's always great to get these rewards right before we roll out the budget, right, and have the hearing.
Timing is everything, isn't it? Yeah.
Trust us, these numbers are right.
All righty. We now have consideration of the minutes of the March 11th, 2019 Village Board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Ankerman. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Dewart. Any additions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, at this point, we reserve 15 minutes for anyone in the audience who may wish to speak on something that is not on this evening's agenda. Do we have anyone that would like to do so tonight? There's a hand up. Oh, please, come on up.
Hi, good evening. My name is Casey Murray. I'm a resident of 420 Simpson Street here in Lake Bluff and a junior at the Lake Forest High School. And I read recently that the Park District, specifically Sunrise Park and Beach, is planning to accept sand dredged from Waukegan Harbor. And according to documents, I think it was the Army Corps of Engineers that was releasing the documents, there are measurable quantities of PCBs, around like 0.02 milligrams per kilogram in that sand, and Waukegan Harbor is a designated Superfund site, as per the regulations establishing such Superfund sites by the EPA. So I was wondering why there isn't a public ballot initiative or why this isn't being brought to the public, because that sand out on that beach is the sand that, well, hopefully my kids and everyone is going to be playing on, lying on for the next hundreds of years. And I was just wondering why they would be exposed to this PCB containing sand without prior approval by the village as a whole, instead of just the Park District.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. First of all, this is an agreement, or rather, it's a grant that was initiated and is controlled and supervised by the Army Corps of Engineers, and it is for several North Shore suburbs, including Lake Bluff, North Chicago, Glencoe, and I somehow I'm slipping with the last one is, but they're all North Shore things, and this has been approved by the Army Corps of Engineers, which certainly has standards and everything else. And the other thing is, this is not a Lake Bluff initiated grant. This is through the Park District, which does actually control our beaches, not the village. So you might want to address some of your remarks to them, though our understanding is that this is an approved event and approved by the Army Corps of Engineers. But again, I suggest that you might want to talk, if you have further concerns, with the Lake Bluff Park District. Okay? Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
So I just have a couple pieces of information to add to that. Speaking with Ron Salsky, the executive director of the Park District, Casey, he said that, one, this is not a lock that this is going to happen, despite what you read in the paper. This is something that they will have public meetings about at the Park District, so they will have a conversation about it. The board does have to take formal action to accept to be part of this pilot program. And he said that the earliest really that he saw this happening would be 2020, 2021. I mean, this is something that is very early in the process. There's been a lot of press around it at the federal level, but it's not a lock it's going to go. But I think the Park District does want to do this, but they still have to do some formal action behind it. And I do think that and Jeff, I don't know if you have a lot of experience with, you were not part of that sand management team and that conversation. Yeah, the previous village engineer served on that group. Jeff, do you have a moment I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about it necessarily, but the idea about the sand, where it's coming from, there was some literature, and I don't know if you've seen that yet, Casey, but there's some information that the U.S. Army Corps put out, a 2-page document that was, and I can get you a copy of it, but Jeff, you want to talk about where the sand's coming from?
Yeah, it's my understanding this is not from the Waukegan Harbor itself. It's more the sand that is, sand has been traveling south from Wisconsin into Illinois. Our sand washes away from our beach, ends up further south than us, and I believe where they're doing the dredging is not in the portion of the harbor where they found contamination, but I almost certainly will be testing all that sand before they redeposit. There's been a rule forever that any material you dredge out of Lake Michigan can't be disposed of in Lake Michigan. And that causes a problem because we do have sand that just migrates. You get a big storm. I know the Park District has put sand at the beach before, and 2 weeks later we get a storm, most of it's gone. Well, it's in Lake Forest now, it's in Highland Park. It just keeps moving south. So the ability to dredge it where you don't want it and put it back in a place where you do want it, as long as it's clean, is, I think, a good step forward on the federal level. But obviously making sure it's safe is very important, the highest importance. That's why the rule's been in place for years, is because concerns about safety of dredged material from the lake. So I believe that will be all addressed. We're not a part of that, but I can't believe they're going to run this program without any testing.
Someone else? Ms. Murray?
Hi, I'm Susie McMurray, 454 Simpson. What concerns me about the dredging is all the chemicals that have been in Waukegan Harbor. And the water has to get into the harbor somewhere, and it comes to the entranceway where the boats go. And the boats couldn't go because they have this 88,000, whatever, square miles of sand that they have to get out of there. I understand that part. But there are so many businesses up there, including the one where all the asbestos used to float down here and end up on the beaches, you know. I would hope you all would be very cognizant of this project and worried about it. If it's not, you know, the Army Corps hopefully does the right thing, but it really bothers me that they would be dredging sand from Waukegan after Johnson Motors and, you know, they're all up there. And there's a lot of industry there still, and all those boats that sit in the harbor, you know, all year round, some of them, you know, there's got to be a lot of contamination. But that water that goes in has to come out. So it's taking sand with it out of the harbor too, into that waterway where this sand is going. So another thing that disturbs me is that in the article about Duckworth and Durbin, who said they're going to do this project, they say in their statement that the water would be the sand would be dredged from Waukegan Harbor. It could be a misnomer and not from the waterway, but there's a dichotomy there. The other thing, oh shoot.
It's okay.
What else? There's one more thing. It must not have been important. But I'm just worried.
Understand, and again, I really think that you should also, you know, go to the Park District. This is under their
Okay.
purview. Okay.
That's fine. I mean,
To-
I
to
see it
share.
on the thing tonight, though. There's a,
That's just an intergovernmental agreement, because you'll explain
Yeah,
that.
that's this complicated story, but long story short, when the state approved a grant award for beach access.
Right.
And so that's mostly up top where, you know, next to Sunrise and where if you've walked along the beachfront, you can see areas which are worn out from walking and
Right.
that it's a little difficult to traverse. They're going to improve those access points there.
yeah.
And there's a grant, they were awarded monies to do that. The grant actually went to the village of Lake Bluff instead of the Lake Bluff Park District. So because
Yeah.
we are separate
Yes.
governmental agencies, this agreement that the board will consider tonight is essentially setting up understanding of who's responsible for what aspects of managing that grant, given that it's not for the village, it's for the district, but it was awarded to us technically. So it just,
Okay. All the documents that were available to me that were forwarded to me, and I don't know where they came from. I didn't see them on, your website, and I didn't go to the Park District because I didn't think
Right.
about that. That's my fault.
you're
But
not alone.
The dates.
Yeah.
Of the last, what they published was from 2013. The last data that was taken in all their tables is from 2012. And they refer to the 10 years between 85 and 95 a lot as part of their big scope. That's a long time ago. So I would like to see new samples and new whatever, but I just think that, and I don't want them to dump the sand on the beach. If they dump it out in the water, maybe that's safer, because the literal flow is where they're talking about putting it instead of on the beach, or they can go even farther than that 50 yards out into the deep water and dump it. But if they do that, they kill a lot of organisms in the sand that are growing there. So there's a lot to look at, and I hope you guys have seen, you know, there's 77 pages in one and, you know, 10 in the other. It's not hard to get through. It's, you know, it's quick, but it's, I just think, I urge you to read it and be part of it if you feel like the village should be really involved, because you don't want to put your constituents at risk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, I have a question for Drew, just a pointed question. Do we have jurisdiction to stop this from happening? I assume the answer is no.
It's a separate taxing agency. We would be involved in the sense that we control the permit for them coming into town, assuming that, well, it's not even certain how they're going to get the sand here yet. They haven't talked about that, the details yet, but it's going to be by barge or by truck. If they came to town through the permitting process, we might be able to have some input about that. But the idea that it's a federal pilot program that the Park District is electing to be part of. So this is something that the district is talking about being part of, not being required to, as I understand. They petitioned to be part of this. So,
I would say that I would encourage you to contact Mr. Durbin and Ms. Duckworth's offices and ask them as well to provide you with assurances that the Corps has followed appropriate guidelines in selecting and the siting of this material. For example, if this material turns out, like you said, to be, let's say, a mile north of the harbor entrance or something like that, then it's unlikely to be so contaminated with materials flowing out of the old harbor, and as opposed to the new harbor, which are somewhat different. And but gain your own assurances independent, because you're certainly interested in that. But they should be able to contact the Corps on your behalf and provide you with data on that.
and just to kind of, because this is so early on, you know, that's why the Park District hasn't been out in front of this necessarily yet, because it's still, it's dynamic situation. Information came out from the Freds. I think that was a surprise to them. I don't know that for certain, but I think it was. But this is just, it's really early, so.
All right, okay. We have the village finance report and the warrant reports for March 16th through 31st, April 1 through 15th, and March 2019 payroll expenditures. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Dewar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Meyer. Expenditures of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $385,599.71 for March 16th through 31st. Expenditures of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $343,258.66 for April 1 through 15. So expenditures of village funds for payroll in the amount of $328,590.71 for March 2019, which are total expenditures of $1,057,449.08. Do we have any questions for our finance director? Okay, do I have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Inkeman.
Aye.
Trustee Dewart.
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Okay. We have the village administrator's report
I have no report this evening.
and the village attorney.
I have no report.
And the village president has no report. Wow. Just nothing to say. Okay. We also have the acceptance of the correspondence, which was delivered to the Board of Trustees in the informational reports on March 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. Do I have a motion to accept the correspondence?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Toll. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by
Lemieux.
Mr. Lemieux. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All righty, we now have Article number 12, which is an ordinance amending the first year of the biennial budget of the Village of Lake Bluff, County of Lake, State of Illinois, for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2018, and ending April 30th, 2019. This is first reading approval, so may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Lemieux. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Meyer. Staff recommends amending the FY19 budget in the amount of $207,797 to align expenses in resolution change orders and resolution modifications with budgeted amounts in the FY18 to 2020 biennial budget. Funds are available to effectuate the revisions from sources other than tax levy. In summary, the amendment amounts are related to the following: Resolution number 2019-2, establishing an agreement with HR Gov for police chief recruitment in the amount of $20,000. Resolution number 2018-59, modifying the pay plan to include part-time and temporary staffing positions of firefighter, paramedic, EMT, and the pre-employment recruitment expenses association with temporary appointments. Resolution number 2018-66, adding contractual cost associated with the State of Illinois Office of Procurement 48% rock salt price per ton increase. Resolution 2018-69 and 2019-18, 19, and 20 related to the non-MFT paving contract change orders. Resolution number 2018-70, amending the landscaped waste agreement with DK Organic. Village administrator approved expenses related to the Simpson Alley tree removal and storm sewer repair on Moreland and Cambridge, and I will now turn it over to you.
Well, that's different, that's for the public, but just, you've seen these items. This is a bookkeeping item, so this is something we haven't done a lot of historically. I think last year I reported these out. This year's because there was some substantial ones. We wanted just kind of a housekeeping, just to put it back in front of you to say, you've seen them all before, this is just a house cleaning, so.
Sorry to steal your limelight. I didn't realize that you had a different type of, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I was preparing.
That's it? Okay, any questions or things that we did do approval, didn't we?
You have a motion, a second.
And seconded. Any questions for our finance director, anything regarding the budget?
Peter's a roll call necessary on this, since it's all been approved, most of it? with
Voice
the
vote
exception-
is approval, is that right? First reading? Yes. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 13, which is a public hearing concerning the Village of Lake Bluff's proposed fiscal year 2020 biennial budget update. This is a public hearing. Do I need a motion to open?
Declare it open.
I will declare it now open, so it's a public hearing.
Okay, this public hearing is for the village's biennial budget update document for fiscal period beginning May 1, 2019 and ending April 30th, 2020. The 2023 strategic plan includes an expression of the Village of Lake Bluff's mission to provide vision, stewardship, and valued services and fosters a vibrant community culture to enhance our quality of life. These fundamentals are directly correlated to the planning and commitment of resources for which the budget is a building block. The village's organizational goals are also the basis for the budget, and the focus is on fiscal responsibility and sense of community through quality service delivery, economic development by infrastructure investing, stability with planning and long-range reviewing, environmental sensibility, utilizing program management, and public assets or infrastructure maintenance and improvement. Fiscal year 2020 is year 2 of the second village biennial budget. This type of budgeting provides more certainty, diligent reviewing, and supports an orderly spending pattern. The budget is organized by funds, which allow for the allocation of resources. The various funds in the budget account for activities with different objectives. General fund typically are department expenses. Special revenues include fire tax, IMRF, Social Security, and motor fuel, and 911. Village's special revenues are proceeds for specific revenue sources that are restricted or committed to expenditures for specified purposes other than debt or service capital projects. the capital fund for special projects, debt to account for bond debt, and water as a business enterprise fund with revenues for water infrastructure, services related to providing water to the community. And the police pension fund is a trust fund that separately accounts for pension fund revenues and expenses. The library is considered a component fund, however, they levy their taxes on their own. The FY20 operating budget, which is all costs except capital and contingency for the village and the library, is $12.1 million, representing about an 8.49% increase from fiscal year 19. Changes are related to negotiated collective bargaining agreements that provided retroactive annual increases for fiscal year 2016, 17, and 18, and fire department personnel and contract costs. The draft fund balance projections for fiscal year 20 include assumptions for project expenses and an annual contribution to the capital fund of $400,000. General fund revenue projections remain fairly flat, assuming no further changes are made to local government distributions. In addition to departmental expenses, changes are due to project rollover costs related to bike path lighting, the underpass Ped Bridge, underpass handrails, and the Forest Cove outfalls expenses. The interfund transfers were reassessed, and vehicle equipment useful lives and values were charted cyclically, increasing the annual contributions to the replacement fund by $30,000. The FY20 budget includes new capital improvement project fund expenses. The fund was created for the purpose of utilizing general fund reserves to address capital improvements. A listing of projects that are in progress and also some that are scheduled will be on a later slide. A balanced operating budget is presented with operating revenues expected to exceed operating expenditures. The village continues to balance available resources with the costs of providing appropriate services. Economically sensitive revenues are flat with very little change from the prior year. Some assumptions used were a property tax 1.5% increase with CPI, EAV, and new construction variables considered. Sales tax assumptions were conservatively budgeted and slightly lower. Other taxes are market or weather driven, and those assumptions have some adjustments this budget cycle, depending on year-to-date historical amounts. Overall, a conservative approach was taken. A 6-year history comparison to the budget shows the stability of property tax revenues, the sales and home rule tax incline with the additions in the Western Business Corridor. From a tax bill perspective, the village strives to balance taxes, user fees, and other revenue sources to ensure financial security. The village represents 9% of the total tax bill, and this distribution of the 2008 property taxes will be collected in budget year 2020. This slide displays general fund balances for fiscal year 15 through 18 based on actual audited financials, and fiscal year 19 and 20 are projected. In addition to department expenses, changes to general fund balances have been affected by transfers to the capital fund for $2 million in FY19 and $400,000 in FY20. The line in the middle represents where the fund balance policy dictates we should be around 50%. This chart does not include the library and represents all village funds excluding interfund transfers. Operating costs have increased due to fire department expenses as stated earlier. The operating budget includes personnel costs, contracts, commodities, and pension costs. The library's long-range plan is under development to chart a course through the significant ongoing change experienced by today's public libraries. The FY19 library budget was higher than FY18 to account for facilities projects. The roof of both the main building and the annex were replaced, and these one-time additional capital costs used reserves. This year, the library anticipates transferring $34,900 back to reserves. Minor repairs are ongoing, and the staff and the Board of Trustees for the library remain committed to providing safe, accessible, and welcoming facilities. The FY20 capital costs include replacement of aging computers. FY20 sees some changes. Capital as a whole is up 2%, contracts and commodities 4%, and personal services 5%. The capital expenditure budget of $5.75 million represents 34% of the total budget in fiscal year 20. This chart illustrates the changes in actual capital versus operational expenditures from FY15 through FY20. Fiscal year 19 proposed capital schedules was 38.5% more aggressive than the previous 10-year average. For fiscal year 20, the capital fund expenditures are 64% greater than fiscal year 18. They include water meter replacements, valve and hydrant rehabilitation, and West Sheridan Place storm sewer expansion. So this slide graphically shows a mapping of the sanitary, storm, sewer, water, and walkway and street improvements. Left copies for you to see, and they also provide the lists of what those projects are, and the numbers on the list should correspond to the numbers on the map. So the capital improvements, the asterisks indicate rollover costs, so there are some changes as highlighted in the box to requested year at fiscal year 20, that being the bike path lighting phase 2, underpass Pedbridge phase 2, underpass handrails, the Forest Cove outfalls, and the lift station rehabilitation project.
Just for the board's memory, the bike path lighting phase 2, we're still waiting to hear back from the Safe Routes to School grant. That's something the board purposely pushed, waiting to try to get grant monies for.
And the second page just lists the waterfront projects and the capital fund projects.
The water fund projects you'll get more talk about tonight later on in the agenda item. There's the resolution having to do with issuing debt. That's the one piece to this budget from the revenue side that you saw earlier in the earlier slide, is that there is, for the first time in quite some time, there's new debt issuance that the village is taking on to complete these needed water system improvements. Sorry, Bettina.
Oh, that's okay. So at this time, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank the board for your support during the budget process. Also, an additional thank you to the Finance Committee for their direction and consideration. And lastly, thanks to all the departments for their work and collaboration. And if anybody has any questions.
Gina, thank you all for this. This is very graphically, it's very helpful.
You're welcome.
As the outgoing finance chair, it's been a privilege to have worked with you for the last couple of years.
Thank you.
You're doing a very fine job.
Thank
and
you.
it really was very clear to the committee as to how we were using and sourcing the funds and working through all the financial details. And thank you to Jeff and the rest of the staff as well for working through all these
Thank you. I appreciate
additional
that.
capital opportunities that we're going to take on.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? None? Hearing that, thank you, ma'am, and the hearing is closed. We will go now to item number 14 on the agenda, which is an ordinance adopting the biennial budget update for the Village of Lake Bluff for the fiscal years commencing May 1st, 2019, and ending April 30th, 2020. This is a first reading approval. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Dewart, and a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Ackerman. This tentative budget in the amount of $18,174,014 plus $1,976,595 in interfund transfers for FY 2020 includes the Village of Lake Bluff's funds and the Lake Bluff Public Library funds. The village is submitting an update to its two-year fiscal plan. This update to the multi-year budget process emphasizes long-range planning, budgeting for results, effective programming management, and fiscal responsibility. Specifically, the primary objective of this budget to maintain current fund balances at or above village minimal reserve levels, control operational costs, continue reinvestment in village infrastructure, and continue to deliver quality and efficient services residents expect from the village of Lake Bluff. Additionally, this budget has been assembled with the intention to allocate resources consistent with the developed 2023 Village Strategic Plan. The operating budget, all costs except capital and contingency for the village and the library, is $12.13 million for the FY 2020, representing an 8.4 increase from the previous year budget. The capital expenditure budget of $5.78 million for FY 2020 represents 32% of the total budget. Property taxes and sales tax continue to be the two largest sources of, of revenue at $4.33 million and $4.17 million. Sales tax revenue projections are flat for 2020. While sales have recovered from prior years and remain consistent, the state continues to raise concerns as they seek to find additional revenue streams that may have a direct impact on municipal budgets. The tentative budget includes $1.9 million in new debt to fund important water system infrastructure. On March 11, 2019, the Village Finance Committee discussed and recommended approval of this tentative budget document, which was available for public inspection on March 22, 2019, at the Village Hall, the Public Safety Building, as well as online at the village's website. Are there any questions or concerns regarding this? Roll call, please.
Trustee Dewitt?
And this is, well, it says, okay, someone made a mistake on this. All righty, so all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 15 is a resolution expressing official intent regarding certain capital expenditures to be reimbursed from proceeds of an obligation to be issued by the Village of Lake Bluff, Lake County, Illinois, for capital improvement bonds from the water fund. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Dewart.
Second.
A second, was that
Meyer.
Mr. Meyer? Thank you. At the March 11, 2019 Finance Committee meetings, member unanimously recommended to proceed with the issuance of debt for the purposes of funding a village-wide water meter replacement project and the installation of a new electronic meter reading system to collect readings remotely. A water main replacement project to replace 3 challenged sections of water mains totaling 2,200 lineal feet of new water main, and a water valve and hydrant replacement project to replace non-functioning valves with certain hydrants in the village. In order to allow reimbursement of expenses related to these projects, a formal reimbursement resolution must be passed. The attached simply expresses the official intent regarding the capital expenditures to be reimbursed from proceeds of an obligation to be issued by the Village of Lake Bluff, expected to occur in July of 2019. Any comments or questions on this? All right, it says roll call, is that? Yes, ma'am. Roll call.
Trustee Dewart?
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Toll?
Aye.
Trustee Ankman?
Aye.
Number 16 is an ordinance amending Title I of the Municipal Code of the Village of Lake Bluff regarding the comprehensive fee schedule. This is a first reading approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Lemieux. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Mr. Toll. As a part of the budget development process, the Finance Committee reviews the comprehensive fee schedule. At its March 11th meeting, the committee recommends the village board increase water fees by 1.5% to adequately cover projected operating and capital costs associated with the village water system. In addition, following a discussion with the Finance Committee, the village administrator recommends a minor technical change to the comprehensive fee schedule to clarify the treatment of certain minor subdivisions. Any comments or questions regarding this particular change? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. A resolution authorizing the execution of a construction contract with VN Construction for the 2019 Water Main Improvements Project. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerman. And a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lemieux. Excuse me. At 11 a.m. on Wednesday, March 6, 2019, the Village of Lake Bluff opened bids for the 2019 Water Main Improvement Project. 4 bids were received, with the lowest responsive bid of $486,232 submitted by VN Construction Company of Elk Grove Village. The project includes replacing existing cast on ductile iron water mains in 3 locations where breaks have occurred in the past with new ductile iron pipe. The locations are on Cambridge Lane, on East Sheridan Place in front of the Lake Bluff Middle School, and on Armour Drive between, Lancaster Court and Inverness Court. The village tentative FY '20 budget includes $510,000 for the project. In addition to the construction contract, the village intends to hire Gwalt Hamilton Associates to provide construction engineering services for the project at a cost of approximately $20,000 for a total estimated project cost $506,232. The village engineer is recommending the award of a contract for the construction of the 2019 water main improvement projects to the low bidder, VN Construction, in the bid amount of $486,232. Any questions? Okay, we're adopting this. This is a roll call, or this is money, so is it roll call, please?
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Toll?
Aye.
Trustee Ankman?
Aye.
Trustee Dewart?
Aye.
Okay, this is a number 18, which is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental funding agreement by and between the Village of Lake Bluff and Lake Bluff Park District regarding improvements to Sunrise Park and Beach. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Toll. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lemieux. Last summer, the Lake Bluff Park District announced it received $350,000 in grant funds from the Build Illinois Bond Fund to the Office of the Secretary of State for costs associated with access improvements to Sunrise Park and Beach. As we are aware, the Lake Bluff Park District is the owner of Sunrise Park and Beach and is responsible for the maintenance and operation of the beach. Because the grant legislation technically awarded the funds to the Village of Lake Bluff and amending the Appropriations Act is not possible, it is necessary for the village and the Park District to enter into an intergovernmental agreement to memorialize the respective obligation of each agency regarding the grant and the beach improvements. Under the terms of the agreement, the Park District will be provided the funds from the grant and shall act as lead agency. It is responsible for coordinating all aspects of the grant. It is anticipated the Park District will bring the plans for the proposed access improvement to the village for review later this year. Okay, any comments or questions from the board? Roll call.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Toll?
Aye.
Trustee Ankman?
Aye.
Trustee Dewart?
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Number 19, which is an ordinance granting a special use permit for the property located at 1875 Shore Acres Drive to permit the construction of an electric lift system on a bluff. This is first reading consideration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Ankerman, and a second, please.
Second.
A second by Mr. Meyer. At its regular meeting in April, the PCZBA held a public hearing to consider granting a special use permit that would allow the construction of an electric lift system on a bluff at 1875 Shore Acres Drive, which is a residential property. A copy of the staff memorandum application for zoning relief and plans are attached that further describe the request. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the PCZBA recommended unanimously that the village board grant the special use permit. Again, any questions to staff or anything regarding this new lift? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, this is an ordinance, this is number 20, amending Title 7 of the Municipal Code to regulate small wireless facilities. All righty, this action is a request of waiver of second reading and approval of the ordinance. Do I have a motion?
So the first motion is.
First reading.
First reading.
Correct.
So moved.
Okay, thank you by Mr. Lemieux, second.
Second.
And second by Mr. Dewar. The Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act, which became effective on June 1st, 2018, significantly restricts the abilities of municipalities to regulate the installation and operation of small wireless facilities by wireless service providers such as AT&T and Verizon, and by installers of SWFs. In July 2018, the village adopted fees for small wireless permits that conforms to the Small Wireless Deployment Act as required by statute, following considerable regional dialogue regarding best practices for the regulations. The village attorney has drafted the attached amendment to Title VII, Chapter 3 of the Village Municipal Code that adjusts the village's existing right-of-way ordinance to conform with the SWF Act. The ordinance regulates, to the extent possible under the FWF Act, location of FWFs, including restrictions on their construction in residential areas, appearance, color, screening, and concealment of SWFs, removal of abandoned SWFs, and best practices in designing, engineering, and operating SWFs, including emergency respond. The ordinance also includes a model pole license agreement which would be entered into by and between the village and a wireless service provider seeking to install and operate equipment on village facilities pursuant to the SWF Act. Adoption of these regulations is a direct extension of the village's current policies to minimize the potential adverse impacts of monopolies and cellular facilities to the extent that these goals can be realized within the framework of the SWF Act. Are there any questions here?
I had a few. I just wanted to confirm, I know the state has stuck their nose in here. So I know it's stated, I just want some affirmation that this is as stringent as it can be.
I believe that's correct.
And is this, it's probably gonna sound stupid, but is this final, or is the state still evolving in the way it's handling this?
My understanding, that bill has passed and we now must comply, period.
Yeah,
I understand that, I just mean, is the state done?
it seems like they're done for now.
Okay.
For now.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, it may have been here and I missed it. You know, with the prospect of having refrigerators hanging off our telephone poles, is there a requirement for different carriers to cohabitate, or are we gonna have, you know, multiple poles, you know, for multiple
Yeah.
carriers?
This is not unlike, I took a phone call earlier today talking with Trustee Toll, similar type concerns about having those, not seeing those. You know, kind of went through this with the UVerse rollout, but AT&T having those quasi-refrigerators put in the right-of-way and
Yeah.
trying to minimize the
Yeah.
impacts. These guidelines have, again, to the ability that we can, gives us the ability to put stuff underground sometimes, to maybe put it higher in the air or lower. The specific utility boxes, this, again, by definition, small wireless facilities, they're smaller in nature. I don't know if you've actually seen a visual of what these look like, or.
I've seen some horror pictures of them, this is,
Yeah,
I'm asking.
yeah,
I mean,
so.
I saw our ordinance restricts it to 6 cubic feet, and admittedly, I may have been looking at alarmist sites, but what I saw literally looked like refrigerators hanging on
Yeah,
the telephone.
so that's in HI, talking about the scaling limitations. But there is, if you go to page, 6 of the draft ordinance is dealing with 7-3-9, location of facilities.
Okay.
It talks about a number of issues, also talks about the size of the facilities there. And maybe I'm pointing you the wrong direction, but there was some discussion, I'm sorry, I did turn you to the wrong place, hold on, stand by. There was talk about co-location where possible.
Okay,
Because some of
I
the
may have missed
times,
it, but I didn't see it.
yeah, I think it is in there, but some of the times, just engineering-wise, the pole can't sustain
Okay.
more than, I can't remember how many, but
Okay.
depending on what's already on the pole and how
Okay.
tall it is and how old it
Okay.
is.
And there's no, I mean, I can anticipate the answer here, but there's no option for them to use the same electronics. In other words, can we compel AT&T and Verizon to use the same refrigerator that's strapped to a pole,
No.
or they each got to have their own?
So part of the discussion that Drew and I had this afternoon, and I only know a little bit more about this because my father-in-law is actually in the industry and his company builds these things. And he sent me an email about a year ago when all of this kind of came up, and I forwarded it to Drew. And the particular product that his company manufactures is actually an integrated pole, so it has no exterior cabinet. It's a little bit, the base of the pole is wider than your normal utility pole, but it tapers up into a smaller standard size utility pole. And so he said his suggestion anyway was to get ahead of this and perhaps if we could specify certain parameters that these poles had to take, and if we can't outright mandate it, to somehow incentivize. So whether that's through accelerating the process or some other means to kind of have an idea of what we want to see so that we're ahead of it and we're doing it on our own terms as much as we can based on what the act has afforded us. He said, and he also mentioned that there are others, competitors that make similar poles for these 5G antennas. So we wouldn't have to just be going with one particular company. Of course, he thinks his is the best, which seeing them, I would agree. But I think I would like to see, and I don't know, Peter, if we can even do this in the ordinance, but if we could somehow encourage these carriers and installers to go towards what we envision as the most aesthetically pleasing antenna, I would hope that we could do that. And the fact that we're allowing ground cabinets is a little bit concerning to me, just because we have so many already, right? So if there's an option to say no cabinets at all.
There's not.
There is not.
No. I mean, so a couple things, and Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, many of our poles are not ours.
Most of them.
Most, in which case we have almost no authority, because we cannot impose a requirement like that. We can encourage it, we can put it in here and says, gee, we'd like you to do this if possible, but if they're not our poles, then.
May I interrupt really quickly?
Yes.
Sorry. On that same exact point, I found the question, but it speaks to all this. This is the answer, rather, to the question you originally asked. So on page 9 of the ordinance, the draft ordinance, it's section 7-3-17, F as in Fred, guidance on SWF locations. It says, based on various factors, including, among others, public safety, existing utility poles and wireless facilities, and potential adverse impacts, the applicant must consider co-location in these locations with preferable to least preferable, and that's how we list it. One is village light poles is the first one, so we can try to control that, where they go. There's not a lot of those. Just know that. Second is village utility poles. Again, not many of those. Third, public utility poles. That's where most of them will end up. But then you keep going down to G. That talks about concealment with co-location, and speaks to if the building commissioner determines that a small wireless facility proposed by the applicant would have an unduly adverse impact on the abutting area unless the small wireless facility is co-located on a decorative pole or is concealed, then the building commissioner may require as a condition of approval a decorative utility pole or concealment. So to the greatest degree that the act allows, these are the tools that we have. What Trustee Toll and I talked about is the agreement that's in here, that the idea of try to incent these providers to be as as subtle as possible in their deployment and their build-out of this infrastructure.
That agreement that's in here is if it's our pole, because that's when it's our agreement to lease our pole.
We still have to permit, though, for
Correct.
other
but-
poles.
Right, but we don't have the authority to condition a permit on them either putting in a new pole and not using these boxes. We just don't have that authority. We can encourage it and, you know, which is what the language that Drew said, but we don't have the authority to condition the permit as strongly as we wish. The other thing is most of our poles and the other poles aren't in the public right-of-way. Assume that is correct. I think that's correct.
There are a lot in the right-of-way.
And under the statute that the state passed, that if anything in the right-of-way, we're also severely limited, because that's what the state legislature decided, that's where we want them. If they're in the right-of-way, then that's where we're gonna limit the authority the most. We have more authority if it's on private property or if it's on village property that's not in the right-of-way.
The early conversations with these providers, we've had some preliminary conversations with one of them. Most of the communities have been contacted by that same provider. Another community was contacted by a separate provider and not the one that most communities have been contacted to. But they do want to enter into like a master agreement where they can, because they want to spend the least amount of time going through the permit process. So there may be opportunities for us to incent and try to achieve our objectives, understanding what they are, because again, this falls right, a continuation from where the village establishes policies with the monopoles, the large, cell towers, is to the degree that we can minimize the aesthetic impacts, as well as with the UVerse, if we can landscape away some of these things, that's the goal. But I will tell you that it's coming, and we are very, very limited in what we can do at all. And this is as good as a tool as we're going to have.
And we can't just ban it.
Correct.
No.
Question for Peter. You mentioned a few minutes ago that we do give permits for these things, correct? Can we differentiate the permit fees as to the poles we want and the poles we want less? No?
I think we've maxed out on, first of all, the permit fees.
We're limited, which you can capture to begin
They're
with.
maxed at a pretty low number.
Very
Yeah.
low,
Yeah.
very low.
But we're already maxed at what you can do, and therefore we have no ceiling
Yeah, there's
or
really-
tool to differentiate.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
We could do it the other
Oh,
way.
you're right. We could reduce,
Yeah.
Yeah, except the
Well-
number is so low, it's not that much of an incentive.
What's the number?
I mean, it's
31 is
It'll take me a minute to
$35.
find it.
well, whatever pole,
It's less than $1,000, if I remember. Yeah.
yeah.
whatever
not
pole it
definitely
is,
less
we could reduce a permit fee if they meet a certain guideline. Is that right?
Yeah, so
Yeah, we can always reduce it.
so I
I'm just
guess
saying, I wouldn't expect that to.
make a difference, they're not gonna care if it's free for a good pole and $1,000 for an ugly pole,
Because that
if an
free
ugly
pole's
pole
gonna-
otherwise is gonna save them
I'm
more
gonna
than
get
1,000.
Premium for
Yeah.
trustee Toll's, the ones that he was mentioning, where it's an integrated pole, the cost differential is probably 5 or 6 figures, and we're talking about
Yeah, well, the electronics either way is apparently the more expensive part of it, and the enclosure is
but you're
smaller,
tucking it
but-
all in,
correct,
integrating
right,
it
right.
inside the pole, and
So yes, $1,000.
as opposed to hanging a
is
standardized box on the
not
outside of
much
the
for this
pole.
project.
Yeah,
But
go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, in between, this is first reading, we can investigate it further to make sure that we're doing everything we can on that issue, which is, we know about that technology. I have not seen any municipalities attacking it in any different way, but, we can take another look at it to make sure we're not missing anything.
And what the industry folks are telling us, where they want to put these are on heavily trafficked routes.
Right.
Right? That's where they want to go. So think about 176, where it's state right away.
But these are really small cells, so if they like heavily trafficked, we're talking Center Avenue, and, right?
They'll be in neighborhoods, for sure.
Okay. Anything else? Roll call.
Well, I don't know if there's anybody here to talk about
First
it.
reading.
There's-
First reading, voice vote.
Not trying to prod you, Stephanie, just thought you might be here. You waited it out.
I was really just here to observe, but much like the leaf blower issue before, my concern is the safety aspect, and none of that's been discussed. So there is science out there. I know, Drew's hoping I permanently lose his email and a few other people as well. But I really am concerned about the science behind it, and I really feel, I understand your points. I appreciate Drew for being transparent with me on the questions that I've raised and handling things appropriately, but my concern is a bigger concern, and it's the science behind 5G. And I don't think it's me, and I don't think it's an odd, and I do understand why the telecommunications industry is all in, but it's very much like having the Army Corps of Engineers that's tasked with clearing Waukegan's harbor for development. They have a goal to get that sand out of there, and so you're asking the person that has a vested interest to make a determination on safety, and I have an issue with that. So that's my concern. My concern's the science, and I think there's an awfully lot of, frankly, if you thought it was all real, horrifying science. And I know because I have a particular blood cancer that's radiation sensitive, that I've been told by the head of hematology oncology up at Mayo Clinic in Rochester that every type of radiation is to be avoided. So I don't go through scanners at the airport. I don't have dental x-rays. I'm doing the best I can to keep myself going, and so I understand that it is a particular issue for me. But I heard radiologists discuss the smart meter issue in Lake Forest when they were coming through with a request for that, and Lake Forest then did contact the state and forced that opt-out through ComEd. So we're in the same situation now again with North Shore Gas coming through with the smart meters, and even I don't know what the technology is going to be for your water meters, but you really do have to look at the science on this stuff. And, for me on the 25-foot lot with the meter less than a foot away from my grandkids sit on the other side of the wall with a sofa, it's a concern. So I would hope that, I know you'd like to dismiss that because it's a thorny issue, but I think it's something that everybody needs to at least feel comfortable that for the health and safety of everybody here, that they really feel comfortable with what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Drew, do we have jurisdiction to stop this?
No.
Okay.
And it's a federal issue, not a state
Yeah,
issue.
that's where it
It's
started.
It's
Yeah.
the federal statute that took that away 10, 15 years ago from local governments.
So in short, we have no power here.
Not to prohibit it on safety concerns.
Okay. Any other questions, anything? All righty, voice vote on this one?
Yes.
Go all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the idea is, at present, we don't have a permit application sitting here. We've had
Correct.
conversations, and what we've typically seen in other communities have communicated is what happens is that these providers will come in and will be maximizing their fiber network before they come in and start pulling permits. We have those, we've seen those applications. There's some that are pending right now from providers that we believe will be in this small wireless facility space. So knowing that this is as aggressive as the village could ever be, and while staff usually doesn't ask for a second reading waiver, given the timing that we would expect permits, we would rather have the village, if the board is comfortable with these regulations, then have the best protection in place prior to receiving an application, so that we can make sure these rules would apply to those applications. So.
Okay.
So that's giving rise to the request for second reading tonight.
Correct.
So if we do, the balance here is whether or not Peter's able to identify any incremental improvement.
We can amend.
I'll call it improvement in the conditions.
Yeah, this is a municipal code, so it doesn't require a public hearing. So if we come up with anything, we can just
We can amend.
We can amend it.
2 weeks.
Amend it. Okay.
Well, don't
though we
move?
would want to do that as expeditiously as possible.
Before somebody.
Like you
So
say,
the permits,
before
yeah.
somebody comes in, and so I guess the question here is, how do we max out whatever protections we have until such time as we might have something better?
All right, which leads to waiving second reading.
I'll move, we waive second reading.
Second.
Okay, second, there we go. All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call,
call,
please, I'm
okay.
sorry.
Trustee Toll.
Aye.
Trustee Ankman. Aye. Trustee Dewar.
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux.
Aye.
Trustee Meyer.
Aye.
All right, item number 21, which is a
Sorry, and so Peter and I will talk, and if there's something else to be done, you'll see it in 2 weeks.
Okay, are you ready now?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
An ordinance amending provisions of Title III of the Lake Bluff Municipal Code concerning Class P liquor licenses. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to make a request. In October 2018, the Lake Bluff Park District entered into an agreement with Golf Visions Management Incorporated to assume operations of the Lake Bluff Golf Course. As required by law and contemplated in the lease between the Park District and Golf Visions must obtain its own license to vend liquor to patrons of the golf course. Park District is the only Class P liquor license which carries a 0 annual fee. The most direct path to allow Golf Visions to obtain its desired license would be a technical amendment to allow Class P licenses to authorize liquor sales on property operated on behalf of the Park District and to increase the maximum number of Class P licenses from 1 to 2. I would suggest that we do not do that. As the liquor commissioner, my recommendation is, this is a private entity that is running a for-profit organization. And therefore, to grant them a waiver of the fee where places like Innovasi and Mavery and the rest of them have to pay that fee, I just think is inappropriate. And I am not in favor at all of waiving this fee. They would have to go under the normal licensing and fee structure because this is a for-profit organization.
What is the fee?
0. And
What would it be?
What would it?
it would, so the 2 things, if I may, really quickly. One is staff's rationale for putting the ordinance together like this was the one for simplicity's sake. Because if there is going to be a license granted to this entity, we would have to create a new license. That doesn't, because it's close to certain applications that license that we have on the books today, but it's not exact. The Park District has operated under the same license for decades, and so there would be the cost associated with the applicant would have to bear. And staff also looked at this is an extension of the public agency in that they're a leaseholder. Yes, they are a for-profit entity.
Right.
But the lease, the landowner at the bottom of the day, at the end of the day, is still the Park District, and so that's how it was drafted, again, for assuming that this is something that would be part of the business transactions, and perhaps, actually, I know Ron Salsky told me earlier today that they would not be surprised if the leaseholder had to pay a fee, and it's not been done that way. Other leaseholders have paid fees, but the idea is if you want to do that, we certainly can do that. It would just take a new license to be created. There was a sense of urgency for the Park District to get this rolling, given the season's here. And I think the leaseholder was a little slow in coming to the plate to get this worked out, so.
With that said, I will still say as the liquor commissioner, I would prefer that this falls under the same thing as other for-profit agencies go, and we treat them all the same.
Yeah, and this trustee's with the liquor commissioner on this. I think they ought to pay a fee. What would it be in line with everything else?
It'd be a fee that would be comparable to is anywhere from $1,750 to $2,500 in that neighborhood. We can call around and see what other.
Annual fee.
Annual fee, yeah, one-time fee.
Okay.
Annual fee, I'm sorry.
All right, well, that's not trivial. Second question. I assume that various of these classes with respect to private entities go through some kind of vetting or background process, is that correct?
Licensing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the background investigation.
Okay,
yeah.
is that background investigation applied to Golf Vision Management under the structure of Class P?
It would be, yes.
Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure that was the case. So at least from my point of view, they gotta pay and they gotta be background checked. And if it's too late, or if they've waited long enough and didn't think of it, it's kind of their problem, not ours.
Yeah.
I guess I'd take the alternative point in that Gulf Visions is operating on behalf of the Park District, and I would be in favor of waiving the fee, ensuring that the other requirements in terms of background checks and whatnot are performed.
I guess I come down on the side of it's a for-profit entity, so I don't know how we can look in Avasi or any of these other for-profit entities in the eye and say we're charging you, but we're not gonna charge this for-profit, so I'm in favor of charging them.
Drew, in your opinion, is there any, if we don't grant this Class P license to Gulf Visions, would they potentially then not serve alcohol?
I don't think that's part of their business plan.
It's a golf course.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, or be delayed, be delayed until the middle
Yeah,
of
it
the
would-
season,
Yeah.
right? Because they wouldn't have a permit,
How long would it
license.
take
I
to,
mean, we could do it at the next meeting, right?
Right,
We could
yeah.
waive
You could do
this
it,
We're
yeah.
not talking
Do it and waive
months
second
here.
reading.
We're
Right.
talking at the next meeting.
Yeah.
This can all be
Yeah.
taken care of, and they will be treated as a for-profit entity, the same as we treat our other businesses that are for-profit entity. And I will reiterate what I think, and I will voice what Paul says. To look up in to say in Avasi, you gotta pay, and Mabry's, you've gotta pay, but hey, you don't. I just, that doesn't sit well.
And I don't
with
have a
me.
problem with that.
Okay,
I think they're operating in the public interest with respect to the Park District, so.
okay. Agree to disagree. Anybody else? Okay. All right, so then, is that, how do we handle this one now on this?
You can approve it on first reading, amended.
Yep.
Okay, we'll amend it that they will have to apply for a new license.
New category of license.
New category license with the appropriate fees.
Subject to that, we're approving it on first reading.
Okay?
Okay.
Out of curiosity, Drew, why couldn't any of our other class of license apply to Gulf Visions? What is
There's-
that they're
We
doing?
were
that is
talking about that and the idea that, is it comparable to outdoor dining at an Avasi or the brewery or even Prairie, the idea of what is the most similar operation? You think about, you have the beer cart rolling around on a large piece of land. They have the actual facility, the restaurant, if you will, where they serve. In addition, they would have special events from time to time. So it's a little different than the other applications. And speaking with legal, they said you would need to have a separate license for those reasons.
Very good.
I now have a really stupid question,
Yeah.
or maybe it isn't. Can you drink the liquor that will be dispensed by these means while driving one of the golf carts?
It's not a public roadway. Right? I mean, you can drink.
Yeah, they have
you can-
carts, yeah, and yes, I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, I was just curious.
Okay.
I myself haven't done that. Shockingly, as I thought about it.
We didn't ask you to confess.
I was just thinking about, did I
You
do
don't have to
that?
bare your soul. We do have the police chief here.
Yeah.
Okay, all righty, on that, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Opposed?
I didn't have a
Opposed?
motion on that.
Opposed.
Okay,
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Did we have a motion on that?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Okay. And then one opposed.
Okay.
Okay, we have any trustees report? All righty, I'm going to ask for a motion to go in executive session to talk about disposition of property.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Meyer, and second by Mr. Lemieux. Roll call, please.
Trustee Inkhman? Aye. Trustee Dewar?
Aye.
Trustee Lemieux?
Aye.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Trustee Toll?
Aye.
Guys get to leave.